Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt the reflection wasn't quite you anymore? As if time had quietly stolen your spark, leaving you less visible, not only to others but even to yourself? That feeling of fading can be unsettling, almost like a part of your identity slipping away. At 78, I believed my days of feeling vibrant and alive were behind me, until I discovered something so simple, natural, and transformative that it changed everything. With just one bottle of rosehip oil, I began a journey of renewal. I'll share the mistakes I made, the weekly changes I noticed, and how it didn't just rejuvenate my skin, but also restored my confidence and joy. Stay with me, because I'll reveal exactly what motivated me to try this oil, the type I used, and the small, consistent steps anyone can take to feel radiant again, no matter their age. For years, I had been trapped in a cycle of chasing youth through endless skincare products. I tried anti-aging creams with elegant packaging, serums filled with unpronounceable chemicals, and so-called miracle formulas that promised to erase wrinkles overnight. Some of the products arrived in glossy bottles, releasing aromas of lavender or exotic fruits. Others carried price tags so high they matched a week's worth of groceries. I would stand in front of the mirror, applying these potions with hope, only to be met with disappointment again and again. The outcome never changed. At best, a cream provided a fleeting moment of hydration, leaving my skin soft for a few hours before it returned to its parched, weary state. My cheeks stayed dry, with a rough texture beneath my fingertips. The delicate skin under my eyes was so thin it looked almost translucent, like fragile tissue paper. The wrinkles, those stubborn lines across my forehead and around my mouth, remained unmoved, mocking every effort I made. With each failed product, frustration grew, along with a quiet resentment toward an industry thriving on broken promises. Over time, I began to accept that this must be what aging looked like. Perhaps, I thought, old age required surrender, a graceful acceptance of the inevitable. I told myself to embrace the lines on my face as symbols of a life well lived. Yet, deep inside, a defiant spark refused to fade. It wasn't about vanity or clinging to youth for appearance's sake. It was something far more meaningful. Every wrinkle and every mark on my skin seemed to echo time's relentless march. Yet at 78, I still felt there was so much life to live, so many moments to enjoy. I wasn't ready for my reflection to tell a story of fatigue when my heart still pulsed with vitality. One crisp autumn afternoon, while accompanying my daughter on errands, we wandered into a quaint shop tucked away on a quiet street. The place felt like a sanctuary the moment we entered. The air carried the earthy scent of cedarwood and dried herbs, while golden light streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow over shelves of glass bottles and jars. While my daughter browsed teas and spices, I was drawn to a small display of plant-based oils. I hadn't come looking for skincare solutions. My faith in them had long since faded. But something about those amber bottles catching the light stirred my curiosity. As I traced the labels, the shop owner approached. She was an elderly woman, perhaps in her late 80s, with snow-white hair pulled into a loose bun. Her skin, though marked by age, radiated a serene vitality, luminous and almost timeless. With a kind smile, she said, "Stop searching for magic potions. Your skin is like a plant. It needs nourishment, patience, and daily care." She reached for a small bottle of oil and placed it in my hand, explaining that she had used it herself for more than a decade. "This isn't about miracles," she added. "It's about consistency. Apply it every night, breathe deeply, and give it time. In a few weeks, you'll see the difference." Her words were calm and steady, carrying a quiet confidence that stirred something inside me. It wasn't a promise of transformation that moved me, but the simplicity of her message, the idea that caring for my skin could be an act of nourishment rather than a battle against time. That evening, I returned home with a small bottle tucked in my bag. My expectations were low. I had been disappointed too many times by grand claims. Yet this felt different. It wasn't tied to a big brand or flashy advertising. It was a modest gesture, an invitation to give my skin another chance. I wasn't chasing eternal youth anymore. At 78, I wanted to reconnect with myself, to feel that caring for my body still mattered, that it was worth the effort. That night, sitting at my vanity, I made a decision. I would give this oil a genuine chance. Not for miracles, but for me. And what was this oil that carried such promise? It wasn't a rare elixir from distant lands or a secret recipe guarded by experts. It was something simple and familiar. Rosehip oil. Pure, natural, and rooted in a history that long predates modern skincare trends. When I first heard the name, I almost dismissed it for being too ordinary. Yet it was precisely this simplicity, free of glamour or pretense, that convinced me to try. Rosehip oil is pressed from the seeds of the wild rose plant, often harvested in regions like Chile, where Mapuche women have used it for generations. Their stories of radiant, resilient skin, scars fading and wrinkles softening with age, speak to the power of this golden oil. I couldn't help but wonder, if it worked for them, could it work for me? The shop owner's luminous complexion was proof enough that this remedy deserved a closer look. What makes rosehip oil remarkable is its natural composition, a blend of nutrients that truly work in harmony with the skin. It is rich in vitamin A, a natural form of retinol, which supports cell regeneration and smooths rough textures over time. Its high vitamin C content acts as a strong antioxidant, fighting free radicals that dull the skin and restoring a gentle, healthy glow. Added to this are essential fatty acids, omega-3, 6, and 9, that penetrate deeply to hydrate and nourish, helping the skin maintain elasticity and firmness. Unlike many commercial creams that sit on the surface, leaving greasy residue or clogging pores, rosehip oil absorbs effortlessly, almost as if the skin recognizes it as a friend. For years, I had relied on costly creams, some so thick they smothered my face, others so harsh they left redness and irritation behind. I had grown used to products that promised the moon, but offered little more than a fleeting shine. Rosehip oil was different from the very first proper application. I felt a shift, not just surface-level softness, but a deep, nourishing sensation, as if my skin was finally being given what it had craved for years. The oil absorbed easily, leaving no trace of greasiness, and my face felt supple, alive, almost grateful. Science confirms what generations have known. Studies show that rosehip oil helps reduce scars, fine lines, and age spots by supporting skin repair and regeneration. It doesn't turn back time, no product can, but it allows the skin to tell a gentler story, where age marks are softened rather than erased. What I loved most was its simplicity. It didn't require a 10-step routine or shelves of matching products. Just a few drops, applied with intention and consistency, were enough. Over the weeks, my skin began to change, not dramatically, not overnight, but in a way that felt real and lasting. The beauty of rosehip oil lies in its quiet strength. It doesn't shout or demand attention. It works slowly, steadily, rewarding patience with results that feel earned. As my skin grew less dry, more luminous, and the lines softened, I realized I wasn't just caring for my face. I was reclaiming a part of myself, honoring both the years behind me and those still ahead. My journey with rosehip oil was filled with mistakes and lessons. The first night I used it, I sat at my bedroom vanity, the small amber bottle glowing softly under the lamplight. I held it in my hands with a mix of skepticism and quiet hope. After years of failed creams and serums, I wasn't sure what to expect. I unscrewed the cap, tipped a few drops onto my fingertips, and smoothed them across my face, just as I had seen in countless tutorials. It seemed simple enough, but I was about to learn there was more to it than I thought. My first mistake was over-application. In my eagerness, I believed more oil would mean better results. I poured too much into my palm, coating my cheeks, forehead, and chin. The outcome? My face felt greasy, as if I had dipped it in a bowl of olive oil. That night, I tossed and turned, the residue clinging to my pillowcase, leaving me uncomfortable and doubtful. By morning, my skin felt unchanged, still dry, still tired. The oil hadn't absorbed because I had overwhelmed it instead of nourishing it. My second mistake was skipping proper preparation. On some nights, I applied the oil without cleansing, assuming bare skin was clean enough. In reality, I was layering it over unseen impurities, preventing it from working as it should. I soon learned that skin is like a canvas, collecting the day's residue, dust, sweat, natural oils, and environmental pollutants. By skipping a proper cleanse, I was trapping those impurities beneath the oil, blocking it from working deeply. The results were disappointing, and I began to wonder if the shop owner's advice had been exaggerated. Another mistake was ignoring the oil's sensitivity to sunlight. Without realizing its photosensitizing effect, I applied it in the mornings before my daily walks, assuming my light moisturizer was enough protection. I was fortunate to avoid lasting damage, but I had taken unnecessary risks that could have undone its benefits. Still, I wasn't ready to give up. I began to study, reading books, testimonials, and even calling the shop owner for guidance. Gradually, I refined my routine. At night, I cleansed my face with warm water and a gentle, fragrance-free soap, making sure to remove every trace of the day. I patted my skin dry with a soft towel, then applied only 3 to 5 drops of oil, warming them between my palms. The faint, earthy scent was grounding as I massaged it into my skin with slow, circular motions, moving outward from the center of my face. I avoided the delicate eye area and kept the room dimly lit, knowing light could weaken the oil's potency. This ritual soon became more than skincare. It was a sacred pause, a moment of self-care. Sometimes I played soft instrumental music, letting the notes ease my mind as I breathed deeply and released the day's tension. The changes didn't appear overnight, but by the second week, I began to notice subtle shifts. My skin no longer felt tight or dry. Each morning, it seemed quenched, hydrated from within. The fine lines on my forehead, once sharp and unyielding, started to soften. What struck me most was the glow, a gentle radiance that made my reflection feel alive again. It wasn't the dramatic promise of glossy ads, but it was real, tangible, and deeply personal. As the weeks passed, I realized rose hip oil's true power wasn't just in its nutrients, but in the ritual it encouraged. It taught me to slow down, to treat myself with care and intention. It wasn't about erasing age, but embracing it with grace and vitality. For the first time in years, I felt I was on the right path, and the journey was only beginning. For so long, I had grown accustomed to discomfort, waking each morning with skin that felt stretched, rough, almost begging for relief. It was a reminder I thought I had to accept as part of aging. But everything began to change when I introduced one simple, consistent habit into my life. What follows is how my skin, and in many ways my spirit, began to rediscover vitality week by week. No one remarked on my appearance or asked what had changed, but I could feel the difference deep in the texture of my skin. The chronic dryness that haunted me for years began to ease. When I touched my cheeks, the rough, sandpaper-like feel I once dreaded was softening. My skin felt more pliable, more hydrated, as though it was finally drinking in the nourishment it had been deprived of. What amazed me most was how quickly it seemed to welcome the rose hip oil. Each night, a few drops sank in effortlessly, and by morning, it was as if my skin had absorbed every bit, like dry earth soaking up the first rainfall. It wasn't just the physical sensation that moved me. It felt almost as though my skin was whispering gratitude, thanking me for finally paying attention. That quiet shift stirred hope and curiosity within me, preparing me for what came next. By the second week, the transformation became visible. Each morning, I found myself lingering at the mirror a little longer, My skin tone, once uneven with patches of redness and faded spots, began to look more harmonious. Those stubborn marks from years of sun exposure slowly softened, blending seamlessly into the rest of my complexion. What amazed me most was the gentle, natural glow that emerged. It wasn't the artificial shine of makeup or the glossy finish of a highlighter. It was a radiance from within, as if my skin had rediscovered its vitality. I found myself smiling at this quiet change, marveling at how something so simple could bring such renewal. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental, a promise that this was only the beginning. By the third and fourth weeks, the transformation became noticeable to others. One morning, as I shared coffee with my neighbor Clara, she tilted her head and asked, "You look rested. Are you sleeping better?" Her words surprised me, not because I doubted her, but because she named something I hadn't fully realized myself. My sleep had indeed improved. I was sinking into deeper, more restorative rest, waking up refreshed instead of groggy. I couldn't be sure whether it was the rose hip oil, the calming ritual I had created, or simply the act of giving myself that quiet time each night. Perhaps it was all three. What mattered was that the nightly routine had become a sacred pause, a chance to slow down and reconnect with my body. My skin, now softer and more supple, seemed to mirror an inner calm. The morning tightness that once greeted me was fading, replaced by elasticity that made my face feel alive and responsive. The moment I cherish most came in the 5th week, sitting at the kitchen table with my 12-year-old granddaughter, Lily, as she colored with her markers. She glanced up, her eyes narrowing with the curiosity only a child carries, and asked, "Grandma, did you put on makeup?" I laughed, my heart swelling, because I hadn't worn makeup in decades. "No, my love," I replied. "This is just how I woke up today." Lily leaned closer, her small hand brushing my cheek before she whispered, "You look radiant." That single word, spoken with such sincerity, touched me deeply. It wasn't about vanity or turning back the clock. It was about being seen. For the first time in years, someone else noticed the quiet transformation I was experiencing inside, a sense of renewal that was beginning to shine through. It was a reminder that the changes I felt within were finally reflecting outward. The fine lines across my forehead and around my mouth, which I once believed permanent, began to soften. They didn't disappear, nor did I expect them to, but their edges blurred, giving my face a gentler and less weary look. The skin around my eyes, once thin and crepey, grew firmer and more awake, as if infused with new life. What surprised me most was the shift in how I related to my own reflection. For years, I touched my face with resignation, as though it was a canvas too worn to restore. But now, when I washed my face or applied the oil, my touch was tender, deliberate, filled with quiet reverence. It felt as though I was rebuilding a relationship with my body, one grounded in gratitude and respect. Caring for my skin had become a daily affirmation, a reminder that I was worth the time, the effort, and the love. The transformation wasn't only physical, it was emotional, even spiritual. I began stepping into the world with renewed confidence. I smiled more in photos, not out of obligation, but because I wanted to capture the lightness I felt within. I started choosing clothes that made me feel vibrant, bright scarves, soft sweaters, and colors that reflected the warmth I was rediscovering inside. This journey was never about impressing others. It was about honoring myself, celebrating the fact that I was beginning to feel beautiful again in my own way. That small bottle of rose hip oil, so unassuming at first glance, had become more than just a skincare product. It was a symbol of renewal, a reminder that it's never too late to reclaim vitality. But the oil alone wasn't the secret. The true magic lay in the ritual I created around it. A nightly practice that nourished not only my skin, but also my spirit. My routine was simple, no more than 15 minutes, yet its impact was profound. It began with cleansing, a step I never skipped no matter how tired I felt. Using warm water and a gentle, fragrance-free soap for sensitive skin, I massaged my face in slow, circular motions, washing away not only dust and sweat, but also the weight of the day. After rinsing, I patted my face dry with a soft towel, careful not to tug at my skin. Next came hydration, a light, water-based lotion, like a cool drink for my face. This primed my skin, making it receptive to the rose hip oil. I placed 3 to 5 drops into my palms, warming them until their subtle, earthy scent awakened. Then, with calm circular motions, I applied the oil across my forehead, cheeks, around my mouth, chin, and down to my neck. This was more than skincare. It became a ritual of intention, a moment to breathe deeply, to exhale slowly, and to give myself the care I had long forgotten I deserved. Each movement became a gesture of gratitude, a way to release the day's tension and reconnect with myself. There was quiet power in this act, turning time from an adversary into an ally. I no longer saw aging as a battle, but as a journey that carries wisdom, serenity, and a deeper kind of beauty. One of the greatest lessons I've learned is about consistency. Transformation doesn't come from doing more, but from doing a little with devotion. My routine didn't demand expensive products or hours of effort. It was about showing up for myself each night, treating those 15 minutes as a gift rather than a chore. Since adopting this practice, my skin has grown firmer, more hydrated, and luminous, but the benefits reached beyond the surface. In a world often rushed and chaotic, these quiet moments became an oasis, grounding me and preparing me for restful sleep. Still, rose hip oil is not without its nuances. Used incorrectly, it can irritate the skin or reduce its benefits. Early on, I made mistakes, and I've seen others stumble too. That's why I want to share the lessons I learned to help you avoid common pitfalls. One of the biggest is combining rose hip oil with harsh skincare products. In my eagerness to see faster results, I once considered pairing the oil with exfoliants or strong chemical toners, thinking it might boost the effects. Thankfully, I held back. My friend Martha wasn't so careful. She followed an online recipe that mixed rose hip oil with an alcohol-based toner to fade dark spots quickly. Within 3 nights, her skin turned red and flaky, and it took 2 weeks of gentle care to restore her complexion. The lesson was clear. Rose hip oil is delicate. It works best on its own without being combined with harsh acids or retinoids, which can irritate or even trigger allergic reactions. Another important rule is to avoid using it during the day, especially under the sun. This oil can heighten sensitivity to UV rays, leading to irritation or even mild burns. I learned this myself when I applied a few drops before a morning walk. By the time I returned, my cheekbones felt prickly, almost as if the sun had stung me. Since then, I've reserved rose hip oil for nighttime, letting my skin soak in its benefits during the restorative hours of sleep. That simple change made all the difference. What began as a small experiment with a humble bottle of oil grew into something far greater, a journey of rediscovery. The smoother skin, brighter complexion, and softened lines were only part of the change. The deeper transformation came from how I began to feel about myself, a quiet confidence born from caring for my body with patience and love. My nightly ritual became more than skincare. It turned into an act of self-respect, reminding me that beauty isn't about fighting time, but embracing it with grace. In that embrace, I discovered a radiance that came from within. Yet, one essential piece of advice is often overlooked. Never use expired or low-quality oils. Rose hip oil, in particular, is a delicate treasure, and its power depends on quality and proper storage. If it isn't preserved correctly, it oxidizes quickly, losing its restorative properties, or worse, turning rancid. Buying cheap oils without certifications or those sold in clear bottles is a gamble. Light exposure and poor handling strip away their healing compounds. A rancid oil won't just fail to help, it can irritate the skin and cause harm. High-quality rose hip oil, by contrast, is easy to recognize. It comes in a dark amber or cobalt glass bottle to protect it from light. Its fragrance is subtle, earthy, and grounding, a natural whisper of the seeds it comes from. If the oil smells sharp, chemical, or unpleasant, trust your instincts and set it aside. Always check the expiration date and don't let a bargain fool you into thinking you've saved money. A cheap oil can end up costing you more when it fails to deliver or harms your skin. I learned to invest in pure, cold-pressed rose hip oil, ideally organic and certified for quality. Once opened, I keep it in a cool, shaded place, away from sunlight and heat. This simple act of care ensures every drop I apply works as intended, delivering nourishment and repair. Rose hip oil, when used with patience and consistency, becomes a powerful ally in rejuvenation. But it requires respect, no careless mixing with harsh products, and no shortcuts. When you honor these principles, the results go beyond appearance. Smoother texture, faded spots, and softened lines are only part of the story. The real shift takes place inside, in how you see yourself and how you carry that renewed energy into the world. For me, this journey began quietly, but led to a profound rediscovery of vitality, confidence, and self-respect at 78. Many believe rejuvenation is only about surface changes, wrinkles erased, skin smoothed, pigmentation lightened. Yet the deeper truth is that transformation starts within. It's about rediscovering the joy of looking in the mirror and appreciating the face that greets you. It's about reigniting a spark that time, stress, or self-doubt may have dimmed. For me, that realization came in an unexpected moment that changed everything. It all began with a phone call from an old friend I hadn't seen in more than a decade. She was hosting an elegant dinner to celebrate her 80th birthday, a formal evening with live music, sophisticated gowns, and a guest list full of familiar faces from our past. My first instinct was to decline. Social gatherings had long felt distant to me. For years, I had retreated into the background, hiding behind loose clothing, skipping makeup, and convincing myself I had little left to offer in such settings. I felt invisible, as though age had quietly taken away my vibrancy. Yet something about her invitation stirred me, and I chose to attend. That evening, as I sat before the mirror preparing, I noticed myself differently. There was a subtle glow to my skin, a softness in my expression that hadn't been there before. It wasn't the face of my youth, but it radiated dignity, serenity, and quiet strength. I reached for a sapphire gown I hadn't worn in years, once a symbol of elegance now waiting at the back of my closet. I paired it with simple pearl earrings, understated yet timeless, and smoothed a touch of rose hip oil over my face, neck, and hands. As I stepped out of the house, a smile spread across my face. A smile I hadn't worn in years, one that felt like rediscovering myself. At the dinner, something remarkable happened. Friends and acquaintances greeted me with warm compliments. "You look radiant," one said. Another, a woman I had known since our children were young, gently pulled me aside to ask my secret. I smiled and answered simply, "I've started taking better care of myself." It was true. Rose hip oil was part of it. But the deeper change was in my commitment to self-care, in allowing myself to feel worthy of love and attention. That night, I didn't just look different. I felt alive, present, and deeply connected in a way I hadn't in years. The transformation went far beyond appearance. Caring for my skin seemed to unlock a cascade of positive changes that touched every part of my life. My confidence grew, and with it came a willingness to re-engage with the world. I laughed more freely, enjoyed walks in the park, and rekindled old friendships over tea or long phone calls filled with cherished memories. I no longer hid in the background. My sleep improved, leaving me refreshed, energized, and ready to prepare nourishing meals, read books that inspired me, and move my body with gentle stretches. It felt as if the simple act of applying rose hip oil each night had become a ritual of self-love, sparking a wider transformation in how I lived each day. Rose hip oil grew into more than just skincare. It became a bridge back to the version of myself I thought I had lost. At 78, I didn't wish to be 40 again, nor did I need to. I wanted to embrace my age with grace, beauty, and joy, and this oil helped me do just that. Yet, it was only the beginning. Over time, I discovered habits that worked hand in hand with the oil, creating a more holistic path to feeling youthful from the inside out. One of the most powerful changes came through diet. I began filling my meals with antioxidant-rich foods, vibrant blueberries, ripe strawberries, crisp apples, and dark grapes. These were not only delicious, but they fought oxidative stress, protecting my skin and boosting overall health. Hydration became another priority. I started sipping water steadily throughout the day instead of gulping it down at once. I realized true hydration begins from within, long before you reach for any moisturizer. A simple glass of water with a slice of lemon became a joyful ritual, both nourishing and refreshing. Movement also found its place in my routine. I didn't need intense workouts, just gentle, consistent activity. A 30-minute morning walk surrounded by rustling leaves or light stretches at home with soothing music made all the difference. These small habits improved circulation, eased stiffness, and lifted my mood in ways I hadn't expected. I began to notice my posture improving, and with it, a subtle lift in my appearance. Standing taller, I felt more confident, and that confidence radiated across my face. Sleep, I discovered, was a silent healer. I became intentional about my nights, keeping dinner light, turning off screens an hour before bed, and creating a calming space with soft lighting and a cup of chamomile tea. The results were undeniable. Dark circles faded, my eyes looked brighter, and each morning my face appeared less puffy, as though rest itself had worked its quiet magic. Yet perhaps the most profound change came from caring for my emotional well-being. I sought out relationships that uplifted me, reconnecting with friends who brought joy, while gently stepping back from those who drained my energy with constant complaints or negativity. I rediscovered the pleasure of unhurried conversations, sharing laughter over tea, reminiscing about life's highs and lows. To manage stress, I embraced a daily mantra. Today, I will focus only on what I can control and let the rest go. It wasn't always easy, but it brought a calmness that showed in my demeanor. And in that peace, I realized my skin's rejuvenation was never just about appearance. It was a reflection of the balance I was finding within. It became a way of being, a daily choice to honor myself with small but meaningful acts of care. It was permission to feel vibrant, whole, and radiant, no matter my age. Rose hip oil was the starting point, a humble bottle that cost little, yet carried immense potential when used with intention. From there, the changes rippled outward, transforming not just my skin, but my entire outlook. This was never about miracles or quick fixes. It was about discipline, consistency, and treating myself with kindness. For years, I had believed youth was a door that closed forever, that aging meant surrendering to decline. But I learned otherwise. As long as we are alive, we can choose ourselves. We can feel beautiful, complete, and at peace with the reflection we see. Rose hip oil became my first gesture of self-love. A simple act requiring no fortune or flashy packaging, only patience and care. Today, after months of this mindful routine, I see the change not only in the mirror, but also in the way I carry myself through the world. My steps feel lighter, my smiles come more easily, and my conversations carry a new warmth. If you're considering rose hip oil, I encourage you to give it a try, not expecting instant miracles, but as a way to reconnect with yourself. Apply it with care each night, honoring the stories written on your skin and the life still waiting ahead. Every age holds its own beauty, and every line tells a story worth cherishing. This simple bottle of rose hip oil, paired with consistency and self-love, has not only improved my skin, but helped me reclaim confidence and joy at 78. I hope my journey reminds you that it's never too late to choose yourself, to embrace each stage of life with grace, and to celebrate the beauty within every line. Wishing you health, happiness, and peace. And remember to subscribe to my channel, Healthy Aging Blueprint.